Welcome to A Class Act, Conversations in Data and Leadership. I'm your host, Michael, and in every episode we'll go behind the scenes of great leadership, from key hires and scaling teams to human stories that shape the industry. This is where real conversations happen. Let's get into it. Welcome, Elizabeth, to the podcast. Really delighted to have you on. When I first started looking at the podcast, you were the first person I thought of, always. Thought I'd get you on, and really excited to talk about your leadership journey. I've met you loads over the years and heard about your journey, so I know it well. So I'm really excited to let the people who are listening to the podcast come in here and get some valuable information. So welcome, and it's good to see you as well. Would you like to introduce yourself as well?
Yeah, no bother. Thanks for having me on. Always glad to talk about all things leadership, one of my favourite topics. I have worked in the data and tech space now for coming on close to 20 years, which I can't quite believe. Worked across a variety of roles, starting my career as a trainee actuary with an insurance company in Edinburgh, then moving into consulting before taking on a role in industry, leading up a data and development team. And now I'm a freelance consultant supporting organisations with all things data and technology.
Excellent. Well, as I said, your story is inspiring. But it'd be good to start at the beginning and what first sparked your interest in data and technology.
Yeah, sure. I suppose like many people these days, I haven't had a really clear-cut path into working in data and tech. I mean, I've kind of zigzagged my way through to where I am now. But I think the thing that's been consistent throughout all of my career has been essentially curiosity and trying to make sense of data and to tell a story with it. So I started my career, as I said, as a trainee actuary. Studied maths and stats at uni, didn't really know what to do after that. And the careers advisor I spoke to said, if you studied maths, you should become an actuary, and so I did. Yeah. So worked in insurance for probably close to 8 or 9 years in total. My first job at Aggreko in Edinburgh, working as a trainee actuary and essentially rotating around different departments in the organisation. And in one of those rotations, I ended up in the business performance department. It was there that it really clicked for me. That was the type of work I wanted to do, because they were trying to forecast the impact of changes in the market and what that might do to the business, really trying to make strategic decisions based on data. And for me, that's when my interest really peaked in wanting to work specifically in data and not particularly focusing on technical actuarial work. So I would say that's the first time when I really piqued my interest, and I really began to understand what a career in data and in technology could mean. And that was probably back in about 2008, 2009. So I continued to work in actuarial for a little while. I moved over into consulting, and then eventually, through my time in Deloitte and consulting, transitioned from working within the actuarial space into working for insurers, working on insurance analytics, and from there moving outside of insurance into working on what was called at the time analytics across all industries. So it really piqued my interest, that first foray into business performance and really understanding how data can be used to inform strategic decisions. And I would say that's the thread that I have really continued to use throughout my whole career, and it's what I still love doing now.
Brilliant. And on the episode 1 with Graham McDermott, a similar background to yourself. Yeah, so that's interesting. So if I was having a think about this, can you remember when we first connected through MBN? I think you were still working at Deloitte at the time.
I think I was probably, yeah, way back. That would probably been a really long time ago now. Yeah, and I think that the data and tech landscape, I think, has changed and evolved. I think if anything, it's come into more common knowledge prominence than what we did see 10 or 12 years ago. At that time, everyone was still talking about analytics with various descriptions of what analytics actually means. For some people, and even now, it means building a visualization dashboard. And for others, it means using AI and ChatGPT to solve some of your complex problems. But what I think's really changed most over the last 10 to 15 years is, as I said, the prominence that data really has now just in common conversations. People in the street talk about AI and have a reasonable level of understanding of what that is. And I just don't think that was really there 10 to 15 years ago. I think that tools, technology, skills have massively moved on. And I think it's now truly just a part of everyday life, just embedded within the tools and the tech that we use.
Definitely. I was thinking about this just last week. We had one of our round tables with 20 data leaders in Glasgow. And I was just sitting back and thinking about it when the conversation was going round the room. And I can remember back round about 2010, 2012, it was when the kind of real big data wave came in, and it was like hashtag big data for about 8 years probably. But one thing that really kind of hit home is the people like yourself, like leaders. It was back then, I think we actually wrote some articles and probably done some events. You might even have been involved, but we called this person the bridge, the real leader who could talk the tech but also talk the business as well. And I was sitting back just at the event last week just thinking this is where we're at again. It's that real leadership. This bridge is such an important person for any organisation, for any like data driven initiative to get off the ground. So we've never moved away from it, but I think more than ever now these people within leadership positions are so important.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting now, and what I've heard from quite a lot of organisations, everyone is really keen to make the most of AI, to get the benefit from it, to get some productivity gains, to make sure people aren't doing the kind of monotonous jobs that we can get AI agents to do. And what's quite interesting though is that people are now being challenged to say, rather than coming to me to say that you need additional headcount, come and show me why AI can't support you to do this thing.
Yeah.
And I think data always has been. I think we all acknowledge now that there's no option now but to be data literate. There's no option now but to use data within your business. Yeah. But now I think we're really starting to see that embedding or actually go and try and use an AI agent, use a bot, embed this within the process before we consider other options. Yeah. And I think that's where we're starting to really see that change.
No, really interesting times. You've moved through some iconic organisations from Deloitte to Aggreko and now freelance. But what were the defining moments in shaping your leadership identity?
I think it's so difficult, and the reason I think it's difficult is I've been really fortunate throughout my career to work with a lot of exceptional leaders that I have learned a huge amount from. But the other thing I was reflecting on is I've also worked with some not so good leaders across my career that I've also learned a lot from, and I've learned what kind of leader I want to be and what kind of leader I do not want to be. I've learned what it's like working for people that you really enjoy and that you want to kind of emulate that kind of environment and culture, I suppose, create within teams. And also where you don't see that, and where people have older management styles that are more based upon fear and other things too. So I think it's been quite interesting actually through my career. I've experienced, as I think we all do, all different types of leadership and management. And I think that really shapes where I want to be and what kind of leader I want to be. I think if I can maybe touch on one experience that I had back in Deloitte, I might have spoken to you about this before, Michael. But about partway through my career in Deloitte, as I transitioned out of working on pure actuarial work and was starting to focus more into analytics and using big data, I worked on a project within the innovation unit in Deloitte. So a really small team of people, Dragon's Den stylist, we had to pitch to get some internal funding. We were building an application, and the person leading that project had asked me to come in to lead the data side of it. That included both understanding how we created algorithms for doing matching within the application, but also how we would then present the outcome of the app in a visual dashboard. So those kind of two things. And I was really familiar at that point in time on which algorithms we could use, how we could analyze the data from my actuarial days. And I was pretty familiar with what data viz looks like at the other end. So how do we present this? How do we make it effective? But I had absolutely zero clue about how we link all those things together. I didn't understand the technology. I didn't know that we had to move data from one place to the next. I didn't know what data pipeline was because I was so used to as an actuary getting a set of data, analysing it, and then giving the results. But none of that kind of infrastructure piece that we then had to build from scratch. And so I wanted to give that bit of context because I really felt going into that role that I was not qualified for it. I didn't have the experience. I felt really quite overwhelmed at a point in time to say, look, I just don't know how to do this. Here's what I know how to do, but I just don't know how to do the rest of it. But what really struck with me when I worked within that team, which was a reasonably small leadership team, maybe 8 or 10 of us plus a wider delivery team, was just how the person who was leading that team responded to me when I said, look, I'm really not sure I can do it. I'm not sure that this is the right role for me. Was how she responded to me, and then how she really responded to our whole overall leadership team and providing support to really get the best from us. And one of the first things she said to me is, Elizabeth, one of the things you will need to become more confident in as you become more senior is that you will never understand everything. So I don't really care that you don't know how the technology works. Just go and find someone that does and ask the right questions. So first of all, what that did in me is just showed me she trusted me, and it gave me the confidence that I was like, okay, She thinks I can do it, and she's right. I just have to ask questions. I have to find someone, bring someone into my team that will understand this. And then secondly, when she said, you need to become more confident in not knowing everything, it almost felt like me for a pressure release. I don't need to know everything. I don't need to have all the answers. I can bring people in. And so that's really stuck with me, just reminding myself of that. No one person can ever know everything, but also then really trusting your team to be able to go and find those answers and giving them the autonomy to do that. And she did that exceptionally well across that whole leadership team, really drawing out everyone's strengths. So that's really struck with me, I think, as an example of just such excellent leadership that really enabled me to thrive at that time.
Brilliant, really. I love that. Looking back on that, is that something you've taken into management teams yourself with your style?
Absolutely. That style of leadership where you want to provide autonomy, but also support. And that's exactly what happened there. It was saying, I know that you don't know how to do this, but I trust that you'll work it out. And just giving people the confidence to go away and to try things, and also to be there when they don't work out. If it doesn't work out, it hasn't worked this time, let's learn from it and let's do it again next time. You don't want people to be scared coming to you to share what's happened, and you want people to be really honest and transparent. And I think I've really tried to emulate that in teams that I've led, where there is honesty, there's transparency, accountability.
I love that. It took me back to a manager I had when I was like early days starting in my recruitment career as well. It was my kind of rookie. First 3 months I could ask and ask. He said, look, just ask me everything. But he was managing me that way where I could just keep going. Then as soon as I started knowing the answers myself, I would still go and ask. And he would just start just pushing it back to me and say, look, what would you do? And it was a smaller example to yours, but it was a real lesson for myself and helped me kind of move forward and started thinking for myself. And I love that. Really good. I've had the privilege of watching you build an exceptional team. We work closely with you in Aggreko, and I know we could touch on this, but the kind of team you built there, but the effort you put into building a kind of diverse team there was like second to none. You get a lot of leaders out there that just want people in and let's get the team built and we'll be able to get the job done, but you really took a lot of time to build an exceptional team. I'd like to touch on how do you go about building diverse, high-performing teams in data and tech, and what role do your personal values play in that?
Yeah. So now I think one of the first things I was really conscious of in building that team within Aggreko is that I really didn't want everyone to think the same. The team that I managed, it covered business analysts, data engineers, data scientists, and application developers. So quite a diverse skill set. And we just defined our strategy for how we wanted data to deliver value across the organization. That included some of our really sophisticated machine learning models, but it also included enhancing and improving our standard operational reporting, making it easier for people to get access to information and automating the delivery of information in some cases. So what I really wanted to make sure when developing that team is that we didn't just recruit people who all looked and thought the same. So the people were from a diverse range of backgrounds at different stages in their career with different experiences. And we're not just recruiting a cookie cutter data scientist, business analyst, etc., etc. And actually almost the team, and to some extent, had evolved naturally to have a good and diverse group of people within it. We had an age range when I joined, I think at the time, the youngest person was about 25 to about 60. So there was a range of experience, lived life experience, as well as work experience in the team. And that's something we then extended by introducing apprentices into the team. So we had people as young as 16 in the team, and then going up to our kind of oldest team members who were coming close to their retirement age and towards the end of their career. But I was just really thoughtful about not wanting to recruit people who all thought the same, because I wanted us to be able to tackle some of our big problems coming from different angles, challenging each other in the way that we think to make sure that we actually come out with the best answer that has really considered all of the options, moving away from groupthink. So I kind of started to do this a bit naturally within the team as I met different people and tried to fill different roles. But then I read Matthew Said's book called Rebel Ideas, which really cements this idea. And I didn't realize at the time that what I was doing is creating a team with cognitive diversity. Cognitive diversity talks about how people just think about things differently because they have different experiences. And it really gives some excellent case studies and examples of when everyone thinks the same, everyone makes the same mistake. And he talks about it through the book in terms of real life examples through the NHS, through airplanes, through football management, etc. And it really hit home that was the right approach to take. So I think I was just always very open-minded whenever we advertised a position. And actually throughout my time in Aggreko, proactively hired people who had no experience of the job they were coming in to do, but actually their complementary experience in their previous roles and their previous industries just provided to be hugely valuable in the way that we were approaching things and tackling our problems. So now I would say that I was really quite deliberate in being really open-minded about how we were recruiting in the team, and that it didn't have to be someone who already had all the experience.
Well, I've seen that firsthand. I think someone from MBN moved into your team who was very diligent and organised and thorough in their job, and they're thriving still and doing brilliant, whereas they wouldn't have had the skills from day one. But I think people can come in and with the right training and development, they can get there, and that's a perfect example.
That looking beyond the CV and the tick boxes that people can have into who they are as a person, and also really recognising what we always talk about in transferable skills. And you're right that the person who joined the team is absolutely exceptional, as I knew she would be. And with the right kind of support, the right training, it just enables people to then really reach their potential. And I think that's what a real joy in leadership is, to just see people come on and thrive when they're given the right environment and the right experiences to do that.
At least you can talk the talk anyway. You can walk the walk. You've been there and done it. You can walk it, and you've got some real examples in real life. So that's brilliant. Okay, well, we could slightly touch on like creating a culture where trust goes beyond just transactions, especially in fast-moving, high-stakes environments.
Yeah, so I think trust is a really interesting thing, and I think there still exists today some leaders who say that they trust their teams, but they do more managing than leading. So micromanaging tasks, defining what everyone should be doing, really on top of people to make sure that things that they've requested are happening at the time they said they would happen. And for me, that's an example really of where the trust isn't particularly there, and where actually leaders often can take a step back. They can give autonomy to their teams and the tasks that they've asked them to do, whilst also providing support to make sure that you're there, you can provide guidance, support and advice. But in general, the task is there for the team to complete, and they should think about it, talk about it, and come up with a plan to deliver. And really, I think when leaders step back and do that, and they truly do trust their team, it just gives everyone, again, an opportunity to thrive. It gives them the opportunity to make mistakes, to really think about things themselves, rather than following a prescripted path which you've already set out for them. So it really helps that kind of growth and development in teams. I think it can be quite a difficult thing to do, particularly the first time. And again, I remember moving into kind of early leadership positions and really just wanting to do everything myself. Really scared to let anyone else do it, because I had to do it, I had to be right, I had to be on time, and I just wanted to do it to make sure that I could. But again, I think you learn as you go into kind of early management, early leadership, that very quickly becomes unachievable. You cannot do it. You'll very quickly burn out. Like, it's not achievable. It's not good. It's not what's expected in a leadership position. And it doesn't give other people the opportunity to grow and to develop as well. So I think letting go of that and kind of starting to build trust, I think is very difficult the first time you ever do it. It's really difficult to delegate effectively. And I know people really struggle with that always in their first kind of management role that they take on. But it's absolutely essential, I think, to being an excellent leader and to really helping to support, shape, grow and develop your team.
Such a tough gig, leadership. When I do these conversations and talk to people like yourself, I'm thinking about 100 situations I've had in my own kind of career and try to build a business and teams, and it takes a lot. It's a really tough challenge.
And I think it's fair to say that it doesn't always work. People say, oh, this is a shiny example of leadership. You give autonomy and everything's great. There are times where in my career too, I have given the autonomy. You trust people, you come up with a plan, you trust them to deliver, and it doesn't work. And that's difficult too, because then that's about performance management and understanding, is this person the right person for this role? What do they need to succeed? Why did this not work out? I think all of that is also the nuance in leadership, making sure that there is a clear understanding of expectation of everyone, that the support is there. But at the end of the day, sometimes things just are not delivered. And then that's, again, difficult conversations that need to be had. I think one of the things I'm always very conscious of and I remind myself of is that everyone can always have a strong contribution to make, but it might just be in a different role or a different way. And definitely. I truly believe that. So I sometimes think when it's not worked out and when people haven't been able to do the thing that's been asked of them, it's sometimes even helping them understand that about where their strengths lie and what they should maybe think about focusing on. But I truly believe everyone is excellent at something. You just need to find that thing.
And I suppose a good leader helps try and identify that and find that, because it's definitely not for everybody as well. You sometimes see people maybe moving up maybe too quick as well, then moving for it from a position where they've got people, leaders, maybe they've got a leader and a manager or a director they report into, but when they kind of move into that position, then the buck really stops with them, and they don't realise how much responsibility who they're reporting into, like maybe what a board is looking at and an exec team. So it's really identifying that as well. I was going to move on. I think we might have covered this one earlier, looking at to share a challenging leadership moment that's taught you something you still carry with you. But I know you did touch on that earlier, but if you've got any other examples, that's great. But we have touched on that with your lesson at Deloitte.
I think I'll probably touch on something else actually.
Yeah.
And one of the lessons I learned in my first probably 6 to 12 months in Aggreko. So I took the role on in Aggreko in industry after working in consulting, and in particular in technology consulting for about 4 or 5 years after actuarial. And I took it on because I really wanted to have the ownership of a data team and the responsibility for delivering that value rather than advising on that from afar. I really wanted to own that myself, to design the operating model, the strategy, the vision, and the delivery against it. So I was really conscious about that. So I spent the first few months in that role kind of understanding the organisation. Totally new industry to me. I knew absolutely nothing about manufacturing. For those who aren't aware, Aggreko are a huge manufacturing organisation. They provide temporary power generation, a huge engineering company, and I'd never worked in that industry before. Spent quite a long time really understanding the business and where we thought and data could add value, coming up with our kind of strategy and mission. And then when we started to deliver some of the early projects, probably within the first 6 to 12 months, I come up against quite quickly. And actually, one of the things we were doing was developing an enhanced suite of dashboards for one of our functional units. They had requested some enhancements, they needed some additional data, they had to monitor some things, and they just wanted to do that. So the BI team had picked this up. We'd invested the time, say 3 or so months to build these out. And it came to lunchtime, and the person who we were delivering them for said to me, "Who's going to make sure that this is all used?" And it almost clicked for me at that point in time. And at the time, I said, "Oh, okay, we'll run these socialization sessions, we'll run some training, we've got some documentation, and then your team can pick them up. This was a request from you." But he said, "No, but you need to make sure they use them." And at that point, it really taught me the lesson about trying to understand where your role and responsibility starts and where it ends.
Yeah.
Because at that point in time, we had done all of the data work, we delivered it, we had delivered exactly what was required. But for that to be successful, it needed the strong collaboration of that functional lead to say, "You now have this ability to be able to track and monitor these things which we think are important. I need you now to go and do it." And for me, within the first few weeks, we tried to implement that. We tried to work with their team, but actually that was never going to be successful because there was an arm's length team saying, "You have to look at this and take some action." It had to come from the leadership within their function. So I think from that point in time in one of those early projects, I was then very conscious of always working collaboratively, always being very clear on what our accountability was and our role and responsibility and what we could do and what we could do successfully, but where we also needed the other leaders in the organisation to do what they had to do to make it successful. So I think that was quite a good lesson for me. You cannot do everything. You cannot fix everything. You cannot make everything work, but you need to be clear on what you can do and what you need from other people. I learned that quite quickly when I moved into that industry.
I love it, really do. Okay, and what advice would you give to someone stepping into a leadership position in maybe a high growth or high pressured environment, or just any environment in general?
I think the first thing I would say is to take your time, whether it's your first leadership position or your fifth leadership position and you've moved up to another senior level. There's a really good piece of advice that an ex-colleague had given to me, and I read a book called The First 90 Days by Micro Warplans, which talks about what you should do in the first 90 days of any role. The first thing it talks about is just to take your time to understand the organisation that you're working in. Even if you've already been in that organisation, your role has now changed. So what does that mean now for you? What is your role now? What is expected of you? And what do you think you can deliver? So I would say just absolutely do take those 90 days, take the first 3 months to really take your time in understanding the organisation, the key stakeholders, what they're doing just now, where your role fits in, and really to try and get into your head where you think you can add value. And I think that's the most important thing. Whether you work in data, tech, sales, finance, doesn't really matter, but where do you think you can make a difference? And you won't know that until you understand the org and the challenges they're facing and how your skill set can help that. We obviously can't take 6 months or a year to do anything because that's not feasible either. But then after those first kind of 3-ish months, come up with a really high level vision or strategy for what it is that you want to achieve over the next year. So the things that you're going to tackle and target. And that's again something I kind of spent quite a bit of time on moving into Aggreko, particularly because I didn't know the industry and it was a whole new organisation to me. But really after the first kind of 3 months, we identified some quick wins, things that would get the attention of people where we could add value and to make sure that people understood what the team could do. And we started to get that collaborative buy-in. And then I suppose I've naturally evolved to thinking about what does that strategy and mission look like? Therefore, what operating model do I need that is going to underpin that? Does the existing team work as it is? Does it need restructured? Do we need some additional resources? Do we need some different skill sets? How do we get to where the vision is going to be? You've got the operating model in place. Then what tools and tech do you need to be able to build on? Do you have tools and tech there already? Do they need to change? Do you need to streamline some? Do you want to decommission some? What does your project of delivery look like? And then getting into place some of your operating principles. So how are we going to accept work into this team? What does our pipeline of demand look like? How do we make decisions? How do we communicate? How do I make sure I build relationships about the things I tackled at each stage? Because you can't do everything at once. But I think spending those first 90 days, those first 3 months, understanding the organisation, understanding your role within the organisation, and then setting your vision for what you want that to be.
Brilliant. Love it. Really good advice. Okay, and what's a moment you look back on with real pride, and what does it say about the kind of leader you are?
So I'll maybe go back to the first couple of years that I spent in Aggreko, and I had spent quite a bit of time, we updated the strategy, designed our operating model, started to deliver against it. And I think for me, a real moment of pride was when we had some external recognition of the things that we were doing and the value that we were adding. So I think in my second year within Aggreko, we won something like 3 or 4 awards as a team. So recognising the contribution that we were making to our organisation, we won some national awards and recognition for that. But on top of that, some of the individual team members also won awards through associated bodies for the work and the contribution that they were making. And I was also really fortunate to also be recognised within my leadership and peer group. For me, that combination of all of those things together, seeing that we were adding value as an organisation, seeing the external recognition that other bodies and peers recognised in what we were doing, and then also seeing the individual impact on the people within the team that were able to grow and to develop, and for them to be recognised as individuals and for the contribution they were making. All of that, I think, as a leader, was just a real career highlight for me. And I think particularly because I've moved into a new industry and a new role, is almost reassuring, I think, to say that actually, all of this is working. The vision was right. It's working. It's being implemented. The team are great, and everything is going well. So that was like a real moment of pride for me as I reflected back on those kind of first couple of years.
Brilliant. What an amazing job you did there as well. I can remember you just getting into that environment. It was quite a big engineering environment, and there needed a lot of change there as well. So it was a massive challenge for you. And I think what says a lot for you as well, that a lot of stuff you probably wouldn't hear as well. I'd bump into people in your team at meetups and different events, and everybody would always be singing your praises and saying how much they liked working for you and all that kind of stuff, and how great a leader you were. So that's always great to hear that from people. Probably something you wouldn't hear them say to your face, but anybody I met always had loads of good things to say about you, so that was always really good. And all the awards you were winning and the recognition, but you did a lot of work in the community as well, and I know you went through different schemes where you brought in apprenticeships and PhDs and KTP and all that. You really put the effort in there for that, so that's amazing. What keeps you energised in the work you're doing today, and what's next in the horizon that excites you most?
So I think the kind of thing that keeps me energised, I think it's probably twofold for me actually. So the first thing is continuing to work with data, make sense of it, and make decisions using it. So I'll go back to my kind of actuarial days, and even before that, studying maths at uni. I've always loved working with data, really trying to understand what it's telling you, and then communicating that to help people make better decisions. So I still love working in data and tech, and I still really enjoy doing that. And I think the second thing that kind of really excites and energizes me is working with people and helping them to grow and develop. Like, I genuinely enjoy leadership, and I know that not everyone can say that. I know it's not a job for everyone, and it definitely is challenging at times. But I think one of the real joys in being a leader is just being able to reflect back on the teams that you have supported And as we were talking about earlier, some of the other people that you've worked with who are now so successful in their own right, and just knowing that you have played a part in that and you've contributed through the experiences that you've given them and the work that they've done with you to that success. So it's just a joy to see others come on, and I really enjoy working and leading teams.
Brilliant. Definitely. You'd be an asset to any organisation or any company you go into, and I think people just listening to this podcast will get so much from it as well. I run a recruitment business and I'm getting so much from it, like loads of different ideas and looking back about the ways I've kind of worked in different ways, but more so picked loads up from that. I'll be sending this to all my team as well and making sure they listen, because it's a real lesson in leadership, not just for people in data and technology, but anybody looking at working in leadership and across data. And I know it's always been good to work with you, but I won't keep you anyway. I know you're so busy as well with your work at the moment and your family, so I honestly really appreciate you taking the time, and it's been great just to, I know I've spoke to you for years, but it's been really good just to listen to your journey and doing it in this kind of format, if that makes sense. So I appreciate it, Elizabeth.
Thanks, Michael. It's been a good chat.
Thanks for listening to A Class Act. If you've enjoyed the episode, make sure to follow the show so you never miss a conversation. And if you're building a data team or making a key leadership hire, reach out to us at MBN Solution using the link in the show notes.